So fuel prices in South Africa are most likely going to go up. Matter of fact, if I'm a betting person, I'll say there's 100% chance that fuel prices are going to skyrocket, judging from what's happening in Europe. With Europe's oil prices going up by 50%. So I just felt like today we just need to talk about that and also show how another problem is being caused by the oil prices. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm Jay Chronic. This is Decoded HQ. So let's talk about it. Oil prices are currently rising because of the tensions near the Strait of Hormuz. Now, if you are fortunate enough not to have known what's happening in Iran, I really envy you. But now, unfortunately, I need to explain to you briefly. There's a conflict happening in Iran between Iran, uh, Israel, and the United States. They're out there fighting, and that is causing a situation where there's tension near the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow shipping route between Iran and Oman, where roughly 20% of the world's oil passes every day. Now, you see, when that corridor looks unstable, markets react, insurance costs on oil tankers rise. You see, because in order for you to now distribute oil or to get your oil from these areas, you would have a situation where you've got insurance on these on your ship to go to the Strait of Hormuz, because ultimately you don't know what happens with your ship. Either someone is gonna steal your ship or it's gonna break down. You take insurance on it, right? So now we've got a situation where there's a war. You've got a situation where insurance prices are now going up, because now imagine that ship could just get bombed by a bomb, or Israel or the United States, because things are crazy between these three countries. Now, once shipping becomes more expensive, traders now ask for risk premium. So now traders now, obviously, it's now riskier for them. So now they now increase the amount of money on the insurance, as I was explaining. So the delivered cost of oil then increases. So the price of oil then increases. South Africa imports most of its oil, right? Because like South Africa doesn't have its own oil reservoir. So we South Africa has to import most of it. In fact, all of it, right? So when global oil rises, oil so when global oil rises, our import costs then also rise. It's simple math. I hope I haven't lost you. It's simple math, because the oil prices to transport all that oil is now becoming expensive. The amount of money that it would take to then, I mean, the cost that we would have to pay for that oil would also then ultimately increase. That feeds directly into the fuel price formula, which I've now been trying to hint at. Right now, there's an under recovery of about 1 Rand 30 per liter on petrol and over 2 Rand per liter on diesel, right? Now let's try and explain under recovery, because I don't want you to now start thinking that under recovery is something so complex. What under recovery simply means is that the global cost of fuel is currently higher than what South Africans are paying at the pump. So right now there's a global price, right? Let's say, for example, there's a global price of 25 Rand 30 for oil. Then South Africans, the those that sell the oil, would then sell the petrol, the diesel at around 24 Rand, right? Now, if we subtract that money, right, to say the actual cost of oil by the actual money that the oil is being sold for, if it's less, that means you're actually paying less for the oil than what it actually costs on the market. I hope that makes sense. So, what usually happens is now that difference is what is called the under recovery, because South Africa, the retailers of that oil are actually making somewhat of a loss, because they're actually selling the oil for cheaper than, yeah, for cheaper for what they actually bought, right? So fuel prices are set at the beginning of the month. If oil rises after that, a gap forms. The gap is the under recovery. It's not automatic, but if it remains through the pricing window, the next adjustment usually corrects it. So usually, can you see that difference? Remember, you've got the 25 rand 30 that the oil, the petrol, the diesel is costing. Then you've got the 24 rand that you are now paying. That difference of 1 rand 30, they're going to need to spread it so that it now adjusts to that amount of money. That's why sometimes you see, okay, now the fuel prices are now going up by 60 cents. That's to kind of like adjust to that under recovery, that loss between the current price of oil and the price of oil that it's being sold for. I mean, the global cost of oil and the current price of the oil that it's being sold for, right, in South Africa. Okay, so diesel is the key transmission channel. So diesel has basically an under recovery of 2 rand per liter. That means that companies that are selling oil right now in South Africa are making a loss of 2 rand per liter. And diesel runs trucks. You see, trucks move food, and food shapes household budgets. So you see, once we see that diesel has an under recovery of over 2 rand per liter, that means that most likely, not most likely, but definitely the price of food is going to go up, because you need all these trucks to then transport all this food, right? So when diesel rises, transport costs rises. When transport costs rises, retailers eventually adjust. So that's where we start to see an adjustment of all the different prices in terms of your food, your clothes, everything, right? So if you want to know if prices are going to go up, the best indicator is diesel, because that's, the transportation of all these goods and assets and food, all of that is really contingent on diesel. Now, I know a lot of people that don't have cars are probably thinking, why are we stressing about petrol and diesel like me? Like, I'm not stressing about, like, obviously I'm stressing now because I had to now learn this information. But when I first saw, I remember when I was first when I did my first job in Nelspruit, and I saw that fuel prices are going up. Because I was still a youngin', I didn't actually understand how much that would actually affect me, even though I didn't have a car. I still don't have a car, but this still affects me. I know you're probably sitting there saying that, hey, bro, maybe you are sitting there saying that I don't have a car. Why should I stress about the diesel prices and the petrol prices? Well, you should stress about it. Well, not stress about it, but you should take into consideration and actually look at what's happening uh, within the petrol prices and diesel prices, because most South Africans rely on taxis, right? I take a taxi every once in a while, right? And taxis run on fuel, and fuel cost increase, then fares eventually also increase at the same time. So on April 1, fuel levies increased by roughly 20 cents per liter. That portion applies regardless of oil prices. So 1st of April, we gotta prepare that there's gonna be an increase in terms of the amount of money it's gonna take for you to get to work, right? Because 20 cents is a decent amount, regardless of the oil prices. See, the oil prices is one thing, then the fuel levies is another thing. So guaranteed that by April, 20 cents. Now, whatever increase we're looking at in April, we gotta say 20 cents plus whatever the oil prices are gonna be, which is ultimately gonna affect an increase in the amount of money that you need to take the amount of money you need to pay in order to get a taxi. So this is not just a petrol story, it's a transmission story. See, conflict raises shipping risk. Shipping risk raises delivered oil cost. Delivered oil cost widens the pricing gap. That gap feeds into the next adjustment. So we've got a situation, as I said, we've got a situation where there's going to be levies which will go up at 20 cents per liter. Then we've got this conflict that is going to also raise the amount of money that is going to take for you to get that oil, which would ultimately add to the amount of money that you need to pay for that fuel. So fuel does not create inflation, it transmits it. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about the dynamics of fuel and how basically this conflict is going to transmit is basically going to transmit a higher a higher cost of fuel, right? It's the pressure of this entire conflict is going to affect all of us. That is why a lot of us have been focusing on it, because I tend to see a lot of the time people are always like, oh, why do we need to focus on global uh, political matters when we've got enough issues in our own respective countries? I've clearly shown you that that's how everything is so connected. And as I said, I remember when I did my first job, I thought that this didn't really matter until I was now paying 30 Rand for me to get to work compared to me spending 24 Rand for me to get to work using a taxi. So, yeah, I hope to see you on our next video. This has been Decoded HQ. I'm Jay Chronic. Hope to see you again soon.